Hey, Average Joes. Today we're taking a deep, thorough look at something that affects millions of people around the world burnout. We're not skimming the surface. We're going to explore what burnout really is according to the latest science and official classifications, how it shows up in your body and mind, the exact stages it progresses through, why it's so widespread right now, the fascinating neuroscience behind what's happening in your brain, evidence based ways to recover, proven prevention strategies, and a full list of trusted resources you can turn to for even more support. If you've been feeling drained, detached, or like your usual efforts just aren't landing the way they used to, this conversation is designed to give you clarity, understanding, and a practical path forward. So settle in, maybe grab a notebook if you want to jot down a few ideas, and let's walk through this together step by step. Let's begin with a clear definition. The World Health Organization officially recognized burnout in the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases, or ICD-11, back in 2019, and that definition remains the global standard. Burnout is described as an occupational phenomenon, meaning it stems specifically from chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. It shows up in three key dimensions. First, feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. Second, increased mental distance from your job or feelings of negativism or cynicism toward it. And third, a sense of reduced professional efficacy, that feeling that you're just not as effective as you once were. It's important to note that the World Health Organization emphasizes this is tied to the work context and shouldn't be casually applied to every area of life. Though many researchers point out that the same patterns can appear in other high demand roles like parenting or caregiving. This isn't a new idea. The concept was first described by psychologist Herbert Freudenberger in the 1970s when he noticed people in helping professions hitting a wall of exhaustion. Since then, the Maslow Burnout Inventory, developed by Christina Maslow, has become the gold standard tool for measuring it, and it lines up almost perfectly with the World Health Organization's three dimensions. Now, a lot of people confuse burnout with regular stress or just being tired after a long day. Here's how science separates them. Normal stress is your body's short-term alarm system. It comes, you respond, and it passes. Burnout happens when that alarm has been ringing for months or years without enough recovery. Regular fatigue improves with a good night's sleep. Burnout fatigue often doesn't. Your sleep might actually feel broken or unrefreshing. And while there can be overlap with depression, burnout typically includes that specific detachment or cynicism tied directly to the demands of work or responsibility, whereas depression tends to color everything in life more broadly. Let's get even more detailed about the signs because they build in layers and can sneak up gradually. Researchers break them into four main categories. Physically, you often experience bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to fix. Studies link this to sustained high cortisol levels in the body's stress response system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis. You might notice frequent headaches, digestive issues like bloating or loss of appetite, muscle tension that never eases, or a weakened immune system leading to more colds or slower healing. Sleep becomes unreliable. Either you can't fall asleep because your mind is racing, or you crash hard but wake up still foggy. Emotionally, joy gets muted. Irritability sits right under the surface. There's a growing sense of numbness or detachment, like you're watching your own life instead of living it. Anxiety can spike over ordinary tasks, and that cynical inner voice starts whispering things like, "Why does any of this matter?" Cognitively, concentration fades. You reread the same paragraph or email multiple times. Decision-making feels heavier. Memory slips on small things. Neuroimaging research shows this is tied to changes in brain efficiency. We'll dive deeper into that science shortly. Behaviorally, withdrawal becomes the default. Plans get canceled. Procrastination turns into outright avoidance. Small mistakes pile up at work. Some people lean on numbing behaviors, more screen time, alcohol, or impulsive spending, anything to escape the constant drain. To help you spot exactly where you might be in the process, psychologists Herbert Freudenberger and Gail North outlined a classic 12-stage model that still holds up in modern research. It's not that everyone hits every stage in perfect order, but seeing the progression can help you catch things earlier. Stage 1, the compulsion to prove yourself. You throw yourself into work with high energy, often taking on extra responsibilities to show your worth. Stage 2, working harder. You become unable to switch off, longer hours, skipping breaks, answering messages late at night. Stage 3, neglecting your own needs. Sleep gets shorter, meals turn into whatever's fastest, exercise and social time disappear. Stage 4, displacement of conflicts. You start blaming external factors or other people for the rising tension instead of acknowledging the overload. Stage 5, revision of values. Things that once mattered. Family, hobbies, rest, get pushed aside as luxuries while work takes center stage. Stage 6, denial of emerging problems. You tell yourself everyone's stressed. This is normal, and push down any warning signs. Stage 7, withdrawal. Social connection fades. You isolate more and stop sharing how you're really feeling. Stage 8, obvious behavioral changes. Friends or colleagues notice the short temper, sarcasm, or erratic behaviors. Stage 9, depersonalization. You feel detached from your work, your colleagues, even your own role, like it's happening to someone else. Stage 10, inner emptiness. A hollow feeling sets in that nothing seems to fill. Stage 11, depression-like states. Sadness, hopelessness, or flat affect become more constant. Stage 12, full burnout. Physical and mental collapse where even basic daily functions feel impossible. Understanding these stages comes from decades of clinical observation and has been validated in various studies on high-stress professions. Now let's talk about how common this really is. Recent data from Gallup's State of the Global Workplace reports show that roughly half of employees in many regions experience high daily stress, with burnout rates hovering around 40 to 50% in the U.S. and similar numbers globally. Other large-scale surveys from organizations like Deloitte echo this, linking burnout to lower engagement, higher turnover risk, and massive economic costs. Estimates have run into hundreds of billions of dollars worldwide each year. It's not just a personal issue, it's a systemic one affecting workplaces, healthcare systems, and entire economies. So why does it feel especially intense right now? Several modern factors are amplifying the load. Remote and hybrid work erase the natural boundaries between office and home. Your workspace is now everywhere, and the day never truly ends. Artificial intelligence tools have sped up tasks, but they've also raised expectations. Finish something faster and suddenly 3 more projects land on your plate. Global teams across time zones create 24/7 responsiveness pressure. On top of that, economic uncertainty, caregiving responsibilities for both kids and aging parents, and the lingering effects of the post-pandemic world all compound the chronic stress. Research from 2025 and 2026 consistently shows these shifts correlating with higher reported exhaustion and cynicism. Let's zoom in on what chronic burnout actually does to your brain and body. The neuroscience is both sobering and hopeful because it shows exactly why recovery is possible. When stress becomes long-term, the HPA axis keeps pumping out cortisol. In the short term, that's protective, but chronically it leads to inflammation, disrupted sleep cycles, and changes in brain structure. Neuroimaging studies using MRI and fMRI reveal several consistent patterns. The amygdala, your brain's alarm center for fear and emotion, often enlarges, especially in women, making everything feel more threatening. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, decision-making, focus, and emotional regulation, shows thinning and reduced gray matter volume. Connectivity between the amygdala and the medial prefrontal cortex or anterior cingulate cortex weakens, which impairs your ability to calm the stress response. Some studies also note reduced efficiency in the striatum and caudate areas tied to motivation and reward. The result? Your brain goes into compensatory overdrive. Frontal areas work harder to maintain performance, but it feels exhausting and inefficient. This is different from patterns seen in depression or PTSD, confirming burnout as its own distinct process. Cognitive tests and research show slower task switching, more effort needed for the same results, and reduced creativity. The good news embedded in all this is neuroplasticity. Your brain can rebuild connections when the chronic stress load decreases and recovery practices are consistent. That brings us to the heart of the episode, the evidence-based recovery roadmap. This isn't about quick fixes. It's a layered, research-backed process that thousands of have studied and tested, particularly in high burnout fields like healthcare and education. First layer, acknowledge and create space for rest. Multiple studies emphasize that the initial step is reducing the input of stress. This might mean negotiating time off, cutting non-essential commitments, or at a minimum setting strict work hour boundaries. During this phase, sleep becomes priority one. Research shows restoring sleep architecture is foundational for lowering cortisol and rebuilding cognitive function. Second, reconnect with your body through movement and nutrition. Not intense workouts that feel like another obligation, but gentle, consistent activity like walking or yoga. Randomized, controlled trials demonstrate that regular, moderate exercise lowers cortisol, reduces inflammation, and improves mood regulation. Pair it with steady blood sugar meals, protein, healthy fats, and fewer caffeine sugar cycles, because research links blood sugar crashes directly to worsened fatigue. Third, rebuild boundaries as non-negotiable. Evidence from workplace studies shows that clear start and stop times, notification limits, and learning to say not right now measurably lower exhaustion scores. For remote workers, creating physical or ritual separation at the end of the day is especially powerful. Fourth, rediscover non-work sources of joy and meaning. Burnout often steals hobbies, so scheduling low-pressure activities, reading, creative play, nature time is key. Studies on positive psychology show these restore the sense of efficacy and counteract cynicism. Fifth, reframe and adjust work where possible. Research on job crafting suggests small changes, delegating, focusing on high-impact tasks, or shifting perspective toward purpose can reduce the reduced efficacy dimension. Sixth, rebuild social connections. Isolation fuels burnout, while supportive relationships buffer it. Meta-analyses show that even brief, regular contact with friends or joining low-pressure communities lowers emotional exhaustion. Seventh, introduce mindfulness or reflective practices. This has some of the strongest evidence. Systematic reviews of mindfulness-based stress reduction programs, especially the standard 8-week format, show significant drops in all three burnout dimensions across nurses, teachers, and office workers. Simple daily practices like short breathing exercises or journaling prompts help regulate the amygdala prefrontal cortex. Seek professional support when needed. Cognitive behavioral therapy tailored to burnout, coaching, or medical evaluation all have solid trial data. Some people benefit from short-term medication or therapy focused on stress management. Ninth, build sustainable systems long-term. Time blocking with built-in breaks, weekly energy audits, and automating repetitive tasks prevent relapse. Research on habit formation shows these small structures create lasting change. 10th, track and celebrate micro progress. Recovery isn't linear. Studies on resilience emphasize that noting tiny wins, I protected my evening 3 days this week, builds momentum and rewires the brain's reward pathways. Additional tools that research highlights include completing the stress cycle physically, digital detox periods, and low-pressure volunteering to reconnect with purpose. Before we move on, let's quickly address a few common myths with the science. Myth 1. Burnout is just laziness or weakness. No, it's a measurable physiological response to unmanaged chronic stress visible on brain scans. Myth 2. You can just push through it. Research shows denial prolongs and deepens the condition. Myth 3. It's permanent. Neuroplasticity and recovery studies prove the opposite when the right steps are taken. You might be wondering how to gauge where you stand. The Maslach Burnout Inventory is the most researched tool. Versions are available online for self-reflection, though remember it's not a clinical diagnosis. Many organizations now offer it anonymously as part of wellness programs. If left unaddressed, the long-term picture from population studies isn't pretty. Higher risk of cardiovascular issues, weakened immunity, increased turnover, and spillover effects on relationships, overall life satisfaction. But the flip side is powerful. People who recover often report clearer priorities and stronger resilience than before. Prevention is where the real power lies once you're on the other side. Evidence-based habits include maintaining consistent sleep and movement, defending boundaries proactively, scheduling regular social and leisure time, practicing saying no without over-explaining, building in quarterly resets, and doing monthly self-checks on energy and excitement levels. Organizations that reduce burnout, according to Mayo Clinic research, focus on workload balance, recognition, and psychological safety. But even individual Individually, these personal practices make a measurable difference. If this topic is resonating, know that you're not alone and that real lasting recovery is absolutely within reach. The science is clear. When we understand the mechanisms, apply consistent practices, and give ourselves permission to change the patterns that got us here, the exhaustion lifts, the cynicism softens, and a lighter, more sustainable way of living becomes possible. Take one small step today. Maybe it's settling an end-of-day boundary or trying a 5-minute breathing pause. You've already shown up for yourself by listening, and every choice from here compounds. I appreciate you guys spending this time deep diving with me. If you found value here, share it with anyone carrying that quiet weight. And remember, taking care of yourself isn't optional. It's the foundation everything else rests on. I'll talk with you again soon, and I'll see you next episode.